Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Simplified CEO. Today, I am joined by Nicky Masson, who is a business mentor and growth coach for women entrepreneurs. Nicky, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's great to be here.
I am so excited to talk everything business and perimenopause with you. So let's get straight in. Tell me about the first time that you noticed that something was shifting in you. Not necessarily like if you knew it was a perimenopause, but just when you started to realize that something was different.
I think it's about 2 years ago. So I'm 46. And I remember thinking like when I turned 40 and like 41, 42, and I was like, I still feel fine. Like I could hear people starting to talk about like perimenopause and I was becoming more aware of it. But I was like, not really getting any symptoms. I'm not getting any of these typical things that people talk about, like hot flashes and like not being able to sleep and things. And then all of a sudden, about 2 years ago, I really started to be experiencing certain symptoms and more acutely about a year ago. And then I was like, okay, I think the penny's dropped now. I think this is definitely my body changing because when you sometimes experience some changes, but they're short lived, and then you're like, oh, okay, maybe it's just a little bit of a glitch. Maybe it was just a few aches and pains. And I was like, oh, no, this is like continuous now. It's not like I'm not getting any let up from this. So, yeah, about 2 years ago, but I would say over the past 12 months is where I've noticed the biggest difference. I mean, like I say, I've just turned 46. I was 46 in March. Yeah, about a year.
And what were those symptoms? What were the first things that you saw?
So the main thing for me has been like aches and pains. So joint pain, particularly in like my back and my hips. And I don't necessarily think that that's one of the more kind of common things that is talked about when you think about perimenopause. But for me, it was the body, like physically in my body, like just aching and not being able to move very easily. And I've always actually suffered with back pain. I've always had back pain, but it will come and it will go. But this is like, it's there all the time. It's like something that I'm always faced with. So I would say that that's been the biggest challenge for me, like the physical challenge. Mentally, it's been a lot around the brain fog side of things. And again, you as you kind of get older, especially after you have kids, I do think there is that element of having a little bit of brain fog anyway. But it was the acuteness of it and kind of like, it's almost like it's getting worse rather than getting better. So I would say that they are the two main things for me: brain fog, not being able to think clearly, the physical. So like the mental and the physical things together.
It's just a joy, isn't it? We get hit from every angle, don't we?
We do, and yeah, I feel like fortunate in a lot of ways because I don't have a lot of the symptoms that other people have. So things like sleep, I don't struggle too much. Occasionally I'll go through little stages where I'm not sleeping so good, but it's not all the time. I don't really have these like hot flushes and things, but I do have other things. So I guess that's just such an indication that it can be such a unique journey for everybody. You don't really know how it's going to impact you or affect you.
No. And so many women I speak to, at the beginning, they put those symptoms down to stress or overworking or just being busy. So did you go through that phase?
Yeah, and I think you question everything and you start to think, could it be this? Could it be that? In the past, I've had struggles with mental health. So when I was kind of experiencing more to do, like more mentally, like when I was having sort of, I would say, I call it brain fog, but like those sort of typical symptoms. And I feel like the natural thing for me to do was question, oh, am I feeling depressed again? Like, is that what it is? But actually, I don't think it's that. So, yeah, it's just trying to put the pieces together. And I think naturally you do think it might be something else. But for me, it's like when something is going on over a long period of time, it's usually an indication of something different, especially if you've tried other things.
Yeah. And this is the thing, and this is why I want to have these conversations, because the more that we speak about it, the more information and, personal experiences that are out there, then people can connect those dots quicker and they stop trying to fit it into something that they've experienced previously or, writing it off as stress or overwhelm. So I think it's so important for us to share our experiences. But like you say, it is different for everybody, but it's just about starting to open up that curiosity of, okay, well, what is causing this and what can I do to ease the pressure of it?
Yeah. Exactly that. I think it's so good to kind of normalize these conversations. And one thing that really
Mm.
helped me is actually just coming to terms with the fact that my body's changing and that's okay. Like, this is a normal part of life. You know, it's not nice to have to go through it and it's challenging every single day, but it's also part of this natural life cycle of our life. And, you know,
Yeah.
we're going to experience these changes. And sometimes I think if you can get your head around that and have that level of acceptance, you know,
Mm.
whilst you might not be able to stop all the symptoms and you can't stop it happening, you know that it is, it's going to be there and it's a part of life. And I found that that just really helped me to like come to terms with it.
I think it can feel really isolating when you're going through it because because we're not really talking about it. You're not seeing so much. We hear, yes, we hear a lot about the perimenopause now. We hear hot flushes, which actually is not the main symptom at all. But our brain is literally rewiring. The cognitive changes that are happening to us can make us feel really stressed and overwhelmed and isolated. So just by opening up our eyes and having these conversations and allowing yourself, like you said, I mean, there's 13 million women in the UK right now who are perimenopausal. So we're not on our own
Yeah.
we might be having unique symptoms, but we're all going through it together. So I think it's so important. And that's why I'm so, thankful for you to be on here sharing your story today and to all of our other guests in this series. So let's, from a business angle now, I want to ask you something that people don't generally talk about
Mm.
honestly. And I want you to really give us the brutal truth. How did it actually impact your business? Were there sort of decisions that you made that you regret? Were there points where you thought you just couldn't do it anymore? Was there ever, how did it physically impact the business?
Yeah, I think it's taken a huge toll on me mentally and physically, particularly over the last 12
Mm.
months, because I'm having a lot of physical symptoms. So I feel pain like in my body every single
Yeah.
day. Like, I wake up in pain and I go to bed usually in pain. Like, it's a lot. And I think whenever you're experiencing that kind of pain, it really impacts you mentally as well as the physical aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I have struggled a huge amount mentally over the past year. So whilst I've done very well in my business and I've always showed up and supported my clients, there have also been a lot of times where I've had to just step back. And I was
Mm.
thinking about it the other day, like my energy levels, our energy levels are so different. Like when you're in sort of your mid 40s compared to
Yeah.
20s. And I was thinking, like, if I was running my business now when I was like in my 20s, I probably would approach it completely differently.
Hmm.
But I have to be very mindful at the moment that my energy levels aren't the same. I might be in pain. So I'm trying to find solutions around that. So one of the solutions I found is that I can't always sit at my desk like where I am now because actually it's uncomfortable. Like, it's physically
Yeah.
difficult. So I'll do things like when I'm not online like I am today, I'll go and work from the sofa where I can maneuver myself around a little bit more and find a comfy spot. So the impact that it's had on my business is I do think I've pulled back. Like, I don't think I've put myself out there as much as I perhaps would have done before. Not I,
Mm.
not in a kind of necessarily a negative way, but just not having the energy to do it and just being very mindful of it. It's like it's a slower pace, but again, it's that acceptance of it's okay to go at that slower pace. Like, it's not a race. I don't have to race with myself and push myself to do things that are just going to make me potentially feel worse.
Yeah, but I think it's making the choice, isn't it, of how you spend your time instead of saying yes to everything and
Yeah,
pushing through and making all of these decisions. Now you're respecting yourself and you're saying, no, actually, I'm going to do less. So it doesn't mean that we're any less impactful on the world and our
exactly.
businesses have to suffer.
Yeah.
So it's just being intentional, I suppose, with how we spend our energy because it is finite. We don't have an unlimited amount like we did in our 20s, unfortunately.
No, I know. And actually, I think it's a really good thing, to have that approach of being able to go, okay, well, I've maybe got limited time, or I might not know how I'm going to feel on any given day. So let's work on what are the priorities, what is most impactful, and then get
Exactly.
really kind of laser focus on those things rather than like, thinking, like, well, I've got to put 40, 50, 60 hours of time into my business this week.
Mm.
Like, doesn't have to be like that. Like, we can very much find a different way and a way that works for us. And so it's helped me to reassess everything. And also it's helped me to support my clients in that way as well. Because a lot of my clients that I work with are around a similar age to what I am. But they're
Hmm.
likely to be experiencing the same sort of things, similar frustrations and things that might be impacting them as well. So yeah, it's helped me to see how I approach business and also how I support my clients differently as well.
Amazing. So you've built your business around emotional
Yeah.
intelligence, um, self-awareness, regulation, stress tolerance, and all of these things. Now that you're on the other side of some of these things in the perimenopause, do you think that that's deepened your understanding of emotional intelligence? And did living it make you be able to support your clients in an even stronger way?
Yeah, it's definitely helped me to understand what's been going on better. And actually, I think to cope better with it as well, because I've been
Yeah.
able to regulate my emotions, and understand the changes that I've been going through, and understand that even if I
Mm.
have a little bit of a downtime, I can regulate myself back out of it. Sometimes it might take a day or two, but that is about emotional intelligence. It's understanding how you're feeling at any given time and then being able to regulate yourself out of
Yeah.
potential like low or negative moods that maybe aren't serving you and into a way that is serving you, thoughts, feelings.
Such a power, isn't it, to be able to do that for yourself?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So knowing what I know about emotional intelligence is absolutely supported me, and it's helped me to understand myself on an even deeper level. And I think that I would have found this whole transition much, much harder if I
Mm.
didn't really know myself on a deep level. I definitely feel like it would have been a much harder transition. And again, like that's the work that I do when I support my clients with this. Like I help them to understand themselves. So when they understand themselves on a deeper level, it's easier for them to know what's going on and also to make better decisions and better choices and those choices that serve them in the best way. And I always think that when we're running our businesses, we want our business to support the lifestyle that we're trying to create,
Yes.
not the other way around. So it's about you being able to make those choices and go, well, today I just need to lie on the sofa and that's absolutely fine. And then maybe tomorrow I'll be more energized. And that's when I might be, a bit more on it and I can do a little bit more. Or maybe knowing when to go along to an event or when to pull back. Or like you say, it's decisions about who you're working with and when and what you're doing. And these are all really empowering moves that we can make.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I love the emotional intelligence angle. I think it's even more important now than ever.
Yeah. And I think talking about the capacity, I mean, your work now is all about capacity, as is mine, and creating that ease and the space, and I think it's such important work. Were you teaching that before the perimenopause? Was the perimenopause what's brought that passion out in you? Or have you just realized even more how important it is now when we go through this phase?
I was, but I wasn't teaching it from a capacity angle. So I was more
Mm.
from a time management productivity kind of angle before the
Okay.
perimenopause, which is almost like a bit too structured, a bit too like process driven, which is fine.
Yeah.
But actually what I realized is when after like recently is that it's not about necessarily being productive. Well, it's not productivity or time management in itself. It's like when we can free up capacity, we've got that ability to hold more. So we can hold
Hmm.
like what's going on in our business, what's going on in our personal life. We can hold like what's going on with our health and our well-being, and everything works really well. So it really brought it home to me that we can shift that and shift that perspective and actually
Yeah.
work on the capacity and everything that we're holding. And then again, we have the ability to feel in control of that. Because I think one thing with like perimenopausal symptoms is you can often feel out of control
Yeah.
because you have
Yeah.
no control over what's going on in your body. Obviously you can take things if you want to support that. But for all intent and purposes, you don't have the control of what's going on inside, from like a physical point of view. But what you can do is you can control your thoughts, you can control how you feel, and you can also control your behaviors. And that really links into the capacity of then how you kind of hold everything business.
And when we talk about capacity, obviously there's the physical time capacity,
Yes.
but there's also the mental capacity,
Yes.
and we have to be able to free up the space mentally to be able to handle the responsibilities of this being a business owner, because it isn't easy. And there's always challenges, there's always new things, hurdles that are coming at us in business. And if our mental capacity is absolutely shot and we are so overwhelmed, we haven't got any more space to hold any more information or make any more decisions. So it's so critical. And that's why I love anybody that works on capacity. And I find it really interesting that previously it is pretty much the same work. You know, it's very similar, but you were going from a structured time management
Yes.
perspective, and now that's changed. And I think it's really interesting because it's kind of similar actually to me created the system and the work that I do right now. And actually, it wasn't until after that I'd created it and gone through the process that I realized it was kicked off for me personally because of the perimenopause.
Mm.
So I'd created that capacity and I'd made those changes and redesigned my business. And then afterwards, I was like, that's why I've done it. So even I hadn't connected the dots, you know. So I think it's really interesting seeing how other people's, you know, the teachings and your work, how that has transitioned as long alongside you transitioning as well. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely been like that kind of organic journey as well, which has been really nice.
Yeah.
But like I say, going from more of a structured kind of approach to then going to an approach that really supports you as a person. You know, how do you want to
Yeah.
show up? Like, and I think that that's what's really key. And again, I think that's really empowering, and it really puts you in the driving seat and you in control. Like, it sounds really cheesy, but you literally get to design your life. Like you can decide what
Yeah.
your day looks like. And if you know, you don't want to start work till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that's fine. Like if you want to work from the sofa, that's okay. Like if you want to say no to
If
something,
only more
like,
people realize that though.
I know exactly. I think that that's why, like you were saying before, it's having these conversations to normalize this, to go,
Yeah.
It's all right. Like it's totally fine as long as you're getting what you need out of your business, your life, and you're getting that fulfillment. Then you make it work however you need to make it work for you.
Exactly. Because it is, we go into business for ourselves,
Mm.
for a vision and a purpose. And like you say, we don't go into business so the business controls us and runs our life.
Yeah,
It's the other way around.
yeah.
And it is very common during the perimenopause that actually we do lose that balance, and the business starts to take up way more of our capacity and our energy than it should, leaving us so depleted for our personal life. So any means that we can use to bring that balance back and bring more for ourselves
Mm.
and lose the guilt of prioritizing ourselves and our health. Because, and I think this is, I don't know whether you've read it yet, it's only just come out, Emma Greed's book, Start With Yourself.
Ah, no, I haven't.
It's really, you know, she is very influential. So for her to be talking about these things, I think is really important for these conversations. But she says the same. Her weekends, she has to take some time at the weekends for herself to recharge her batteries and, you know, and free up her capacity and work through what's happened in that week. And she's getting absolutely hounded by the press saying, you know, gosh, you're a mum and you've got 4 kids and you're not spending all your time with your children. If she spent her entire weekends with her children, she wouldn't be able to be Emma Greed. You know, she would lose so much of herself and she would go straight into burnout. And so I think it's so important that we just normalize the fact that we can spend time just for ourselves.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be layered with guilt or shame. We are humans and just as important as everyone else.
Absolutely. And isn't it incredible how much guilt we carry as women? Like I speak to women
Yeah,
on a daily basis and they feel guilty. They feel guilty for taking time off. They feel guilty for taking time for themselves. They feel guilty if they have to step away from their business. And it's like we have to change the narrative. But like you say, when the narrative in the press is, oh my God, like how on earth could you even dare to take time away from your kids? It's like that's a message that we're hearing, but
yeah,
we also have to know that that's not real. It's just an opinion, but it doesn't have to be your opinion. It doesn't have to be the right way of doing things. So yeah, we can absolutely start to normalize a different way of doing things. And like, how can you possibly show up as your best self for yourself, for your kids, for your clients, for your family, if you're always at the bottom of the pile? Like you
exactly.
can't. Like you absolutely can't. And you know, this goes to you have to make sure that your basic needs are met first, like at the absolute basic,
Uh-huh.
before you even start to think about building a business or changing the world. Like you have to make sure those basic needs are met. Most people skip those basic needs. They don't get enough sleep. They don't look after themselves. They don't get like put the right things in their body. They don't drink enough water. take care of themselves, like all these things. So they skip that and then they wonder, why they're kind of feeling like exhausted and overwhelmed. So again, it's bringing it back to like what are the basics? Like get your needs met. If you need a little bit of
Yeah.
time out, you take that time
Put your own oxygen mask on first.
out because you're gonna come back so much stronger. You're gonna come back like fitter, like better. Like it's just and then you can give well to everything in your life. And it's recognizing what you need and importantly, getting what you need, like either asking for help or putting yourself forward or making sure that you have that thing in place. Because it's so easy for your life to just take over and you just go through the same motions day in, day out,
Yeah.
week after week, and you get burnt out. But again, coming back to that control thing of you're in control. So if you know you need a bit of time out, you've got to take that responsibility to go, hang on a minute, I need some time here.
Yeah. I think it's difficult though to backpedal and
Yeah,
add that into your life when you've never requested it before.
it is.
And that's where you get the pushback from people. If you have always been that mum that is there 24 hours for her children or for her husband, you do everything in the house, or if you've always given everything of yourself,
Yeah.
when you do suddenly ask for some of your time back, it can be difficult to make that transition. So it's about having the open conversations again with the people around you as to the reason that you need that time and actually understanding without all the labels. Because I think when we get to this stage of life, we have so many labels that are weighing us down, the mum, the wife, the friend, the this, the that. And actually, if you just remove all of those, who actually are you? Just you. And what do you need? And if you can prioritize that and take the time that you need, everything else becomes easier.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also starting with baby steps as well, isn't it? 'Cause, like you touched on a
Yeah.
really good point there that like this could be completely alien, like, might not be used to putting yourself first. A lot of women aren't, and it can be such a weird
Yeah.
thing to suddenly go, I need this. So start small. Like it doesn't have to be like like a complete life overhaul. Maybe you just have conversations with the people around you, let them know how you're feeling, and you start with baby steps. Maybe taking yourself for a walk for 10 minutes, something like that, and then you build it up from there. But it
Mm.
really it starts from understanding yourself and knowing like what's important to you, what do you really need, and then start to make the steps towards that.
Think it's really important to highlight here as well what self-care actually is, because society has built this image that it's, glamorous spa days and weekend retreats with your friends.
Yeah.
And obviously that's all fabulous, but that isn't really what day-to-day self-care is.
No.
Self-care is a 10-minute walk in the fresh air, in the peace and quiet, or curling up in the garden with a book for half an hour. Like it's very simple steps that you can do every day
Yeah.
that just allow you to recalibrate. And then, yes, the spa breaks and everything else, not saying don't do them, like they're fabulous, but it's not a reality to be able to do that every week, is it?
No.
So you need the simple, pleasures of life where you can just take 10 minutes, go and listen to the birds sing or whatever it might be for you, have a hot bath at night without being disturbed by anybody. Like there's very simple things that you can do that is enough that will start rebalancing that in you, and then work up to the bigger things.
Yeah, definitely. So it's almost like having a toolkit for yourself, isn't it? That you can dip in and out
Yeah.
of and almost like have the awareness to know, like, hang on a minute, I don't feel good or something's not working. You might be feeling tense or anxious or overwhelmed, and then being able to go like and ask yourself, like, well, what do I need to do to shift this?
Hmm.
How can I
Yeah.
literally shift this energy away? And that might be a 10-minute walk. Like I love walking. It's one of the biggest ways, like fastest ways I can just clear my head.
Yeah, me too.
But even just standing in the garden for 10 minutes and having the sun on your face.
Yeah.
But it's knowing what works for you, isn't it, as well? And what works for one person might not work for another person. Like someone might love a nice soak in the bath, another person, it might be their worst nightmare. So it's knowing what works for you and having that ability to dip into it when you need it. Even if that's like
Yeah.
you sat at your desk and you go, do you know what? I need to take myself off for 10 minutes here because this is not good. Like it's not good energetically. And then you can shift it. And usually you can actually shift how you're feeling fairly quickly.
Yeah. I think often just making the decision that you're going to take an action to shift
Yes.
the energy can start shifting the energy. But again, what's really important here is not to wait till it's too late, till you've already lost your temper, till you've already burnt out, and feeling incredibly overwhelmed. When you just start to feel that uncomfortableness and, like for you, for instance, when you're getting the physical pain, don't wait until it's crippling. Wait until, you just start feeling it and think, okay, now I'm going to take myself to the sofa. Or it's just having that awareness that when things start to feel a bit uncomfortable, that's when you take action, not when it's overbearing.
Yeah, exactly. Because I know that things can spiral out of control. So there's no upper limit to how good you can feel, and there's also no lower limit to how bad you can feel. And
Yeah.
your emotions can spiral out of control quite quickly, and then it can lead to other things. For example, like anger. And a prime example is just before I came here to have this conversation with you is I'd had a couple of Zoom calls already this morning, and I knew that I needed to move my body. So just before I came on to this call, I went and walked around the house, literally just for 10 minutes, because I could feel myself, like I could feel the pain, and I just knew I needed to move. I could have easily have just sat here and plowered on, like
Yeah.
powered through, but it wouldn't have served me.
But this is the thing, 5 to 10 years ago, you would have.
Yes,
You would have just sat for the whole period and pushed
yes,
through.
I would have.
So it's being aware of the changes and then just accepting them with grace and just saying, yeah, I'm going to go and take 10 minutes.
Yeah,
I don't need to push through. I think a lot of that comes from hustle culture, right? Which we're all bought into. And you actually use the term a lot, calm leadership. So in a world that really does glorify the hustle culture and the always on energy, where do we as women feel the resistance to calm? Where does it come from? And how do you coach women through the guilt of choosing to slow down and to choose the calmer path?
yeah. I think the resistance comes from like we are conditioned to perform and show up in a certain way. Even if you think back to school, like it's very regimented. You get there at 9 and you leave at 3 and you have your lessons, and then you go into the workplace and you're expected to work like 40 hours a week for 40 years,
Mm,
and you only have so many holidays a year. So it's very, very conditioned to show up and be a certain way. And there's a lot of, information out there that says like, to be successful, it's a certain way. And I think that that puts a lot of pressure on women to feel like they've got to show up all the time. And if
yeah,
you're not working, you're somehow not as good or you're not as successful. And so when we talk about this kind of calm sort of leadership and this calm approach, it's not about saying that you are like dampening down your goals or that you can't be successful. It's just a completely different approach in terms of you don't have to hustle to get the results that you want. Maybe hustling may well have worked for you really well if you were like in your 20s and 30s, but again, it's like you're in a different time of your life at the like right now. And it's
yeah,
important to adapt to that. One of the hardest things I think is letting go of the guilt of that, because you are always going to compare yourself with what you think you should be doing. It's this should, oh, I should be
I
working,
hate that word.
and I even like do it myself. Like we all do it because we're so conditioned to think in a certain way. So example, like exactly what I just mentioned, like I took myself for a walk like round the house before we came and had our conversation. But even I had that thought of, oh, but I should just be doing this, like because obviously I've got things that I need to get done. So in
Mm,
that moment, I have to shift that thought and replace it with a different thought and go, no, that it's not important. It's not a high priority in the grand scheme of
yeah.
things. It can wait. What is most important at this point in time is me moving my body so I can come and have this amazing chat with you.
Yeah, it's
Um,
about when it's having that awareness and being able to understand I'm having that thought and it's not helpful.
yeah,
So let's reframe it. And that's the bit that a lot of people struggle with. And I used to really struggle with this is actually catching the
yeah,
thought and realizing, okay, no, that needs a reframe. It's not helpful. And that is a skill. And it's something that takes, practice. And I don't think it's anything that is ever perfectly conquered. Like you say, you still have those thoughts. So it's something that you teach every day. And I still struggle with it. But I mean, gosh, I've made huge, improvements over the years, but I still get the thoughts. It's not like, and I think that's something that people don't understand. It's not about stopping those thoughts happening because I don't think we really can when society is still screaming it at us constantly. But it's just about having the ownership and the awareness of our thoughts to say, no, thank you, flick you away. I'm not interested in
yeah,
you. Let's give it a reframe and what do we actually need and want in this moment?
100%. And there are always going to be 100 ways that you can get to your goal. Of course, you can get
Mm,
there by hustling. Of course, you can get there by working 60 hours a week. But what if you could also get there by protecting your energy, like protecting your capacity, and still get incredible results and still do incredible things in the world and make an impact? And
yeah,
that's what I really want to get across to women is that like we you can carve your way, you can do it. You don't have to listen to that narrative or what society tells us that we should do. Like we can very much change it. And I love that. Like I love that we have the ability to do that. Yes, there's going to be some unraveling that is going to be needed. There's some like
yeah,
conditioning that we've got to like let go of. And exactly what you said, you know, this stuff isn't easy. Like we have to work at it all the time. Like I work at it every day and I teach this stuff. I
exactly.
have to
Yeah,
work on it every single day. I work on myself every single day. But how amazing is it that we get to do that? Like we can work on ourselves and we can make our lives better. So yeah, so I think, you know, from the calm leadership point of view, I think sometimes it can be seen as like potentially like you're not ambitious. Like it's almost like being the opposite of
mm,
ambitious, but it's not. It doesn't mean you have to be less ambitious. It doesn't mean you have to be less successful. It's a different approach. It's a different way of doing things.
yeah. When we talk about the calm aspect, so you said, you know, it starts very young. We go through school, then we go into the career. And I 100% agree. But what is interesting, I want to ask you is men also go through that exact process with us, but yet they don't have the same struggles that we do.
Yeah.
Is that because of our hormonal differences or is it a society? Like, where do you think that difference comes from?
I think it's a mixture of things. I do think the men have a very different approach and they often think about things like not emotionally, they think things through strategically. They don't have the
Yeah.
same emotional response as women do most of the
Hmm.
time. There is also hormones. I think they obviously have a big impact because they, you know, really like, you know, kind of change everything about like your perspective and emotionally and physically. So that has a lot to do with it. But I also think it's a lot to do with the society and what society tells us, like, you know, women should be doing these types of roles. Or, you know, if you think back to not a huge amount of time ago, like women were like at home having kids and raising a family, and the man went out to work.
Yeah.
But
A
now
few generations ago.
yeah, not long ago at all, really. That was kind of the norm in society. But now women are still having their families and raising their kids, but they're also building empires at the same
I
time.
know.
And this is where this mental load is coming from. You know, we are doing it all. But I do believe that, you know, it's the way that men and women are perceived differently in society and their roles are perceived very differently. I do think things are changing. But even when you look at like the gender pay gap and things like that, and men are still paid more
Yeah.
than women. And so women
Yeah.
grow up feeling that they're not good enough or they can't get those higher paid roles. Or, you know, I remember when I was a child, it was like the women are nurses and the men are doctors,
Yeah.
even that kind of thing. So I just feel that like there's so many beliefs that have been ingrained in us, societal beliefs that are changing, but I do think that it still has a massive impact on women today, especially women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, because you've had 40, 50, 60 years of that conditioning.
Yeah, yeah. And I think when we were in our 20s and 30s, we could hustle and we felt like we could have the ambition. And I think our generation is probably the first generation where women have really been able to build empires and feel like we deserve a place in that market. But suddenly, when you're hit with the perimenopause and all of these changes are happening, we we don't lose the ambition, but it shows up differently because suddenly we can't hustle. And we have a lot of the time, a lot of my clients don't have the interest in the hustle anymore. So they feel like they're losing the passion for their business. But actually when we work through that, they're just equally as passionate and driven as they always were, but they just want it in a different way. They don't want to have to work the long hours. They don't have the energy and the capacity to do so. That's why I love what you said earlier, that there is another way. It is about working smarter, not harder. And I think it's something that men don't struggle. They don't have the capacity issues. They'll go to sleep, they'll recharge fully and they're up and raring to go the next day. We aren't even on a daily cycle. We can be on a weekly or a monthly cycle, you know? So it's once you've got that understanding of yourself, you can still have those goals and ambitions and push forward for them, but just in a gentler and calmer way.
Yeah, and I think this is where it's hard when, you know, women compare themselves against men because we are very different. You
Mm,
know, you touched on
exactly.
it perfectly well there. Is like men for most of the time, they don't experience these sort of physical changes. If we just talk about physical in itself, like they don't experience those through their hormones or, through the menopause, for example, like they don't get that. So they're pretty much used to going about their day without too many challenges. Obviously, everybody's, can have an illness or something that's happening in their life, whether it's
Yeah.
mental or physical. It's different when, like you said, you don't know what's going to happen on any given day. Like you can't predict it.
Yeah.
Like one day I can wake up and I can move around and I can be quite free. And then the other day I couldn't even walk around the supermarket. I was with my husband, I had to go and sit in the car because I was just like, I physically can't walk around this supermarket. And I was like, I'm only 46. Like,
It's crazy.
mentally, I'm still 20, but physically, I feel like I'm 70. And again, I think that's quite a hard concept to get your head
Yeah.
around because it's like, oh, I feel fine, like in my head. Like, I still don't feel like I'm much different. But when your body starts to change, you're like, what's like that can be a lot to get your head around.
Yeah.
So I think again, as women, like don't compare yourself like to men, or don't be looking even other women. Like just stay in your lane and figure out like what's right for you, and navigate those changes with other people as well. I think having support around you to be able to talk about these things openly and honestly is really good. It's healthy to do that.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think even a lot of women I speak to, even with their best friends, they're not really talking about the perimenopause. And I'm like, why on earth would we not be sharing this really important chapter
Mm,
of our lives? And it can, like, the average perimenopause lasts 7 years, and that's without the actual menopause element. So this is a huge time frame in our lives. We have to just be sharing, even if it's just to have a moan, like, oh God, I'm sick of this, and, whatever, but just to be sharing because it does half the load. It's so overwhelming. And especially, like you say, when suddenly your body physically isn't working
yeah,
the way that it used to. Some days I can wake up and honestly, I feel like I could take on the world. Like I am on fire. And then the next day I'll wake up and I can't even get off the sofa to get dressed. Like
yeah,
it's so up and down, and you have no control over what the next day is going to bring. And that's why it's so important for me to teach the different areas of work and which ones fit with your different energy capacities.
yeah.
So you understand, well, this is going to be a tough day. So let's focus on these tasks that are much easier for me to handle. I think it's all about awareness, isn't it? So we're both really intentional about not framing perimenopause as something to dread or like
Yeah.
just survive. So I'll ask you this, looking back, what has perimenopause given you that you wouldn't have found any other way? What's the gift of perimenopause?
I think it's a gift of slowing down and actually understanding yourself
Yeah.
even more on an even deeper level. Like, who does want to keep going at that fast pace? You might, trick yourself and convince yourself that, oh yeah, I can hustle and work all these long hours. But really when it comes down to it, like, I'm pretty sure you probably don't want to be doing that. So for me, it was that ability to slow down and really have that deeper understanding of I can do it my way. I can be flexible, can make decisions based on how I'm feeling and what's best for me. And it comes back to that empowering piece of it just makes me feel stronger actually as a person. Like I might not feel very strong physically, but as a person, I definitely feel stronger. I feel like it's a little almost, it sounds a bit weird, but almost like a bit of a superpower. You
Love
can
that.
navigate it. Like, I'm not being funny, but how like much do we have to put up with like childbirth and labor and like perimenopause?
We don't have it easy, do
We
we?
don't have it easy, but we do it. And I think that's the thing. We do it, we get through it, and usually we come back stronger, we come back fighting. And I feel that if I can get through this stage of my life right now and come out of the other side stronger, better, then it's all worth it.
Yeah. I see it as it's an evolution,
Mm.
and it's literally taking us into that next chapter. And I think
Yeah.
mine is very similar to yours. I mean, I've dropped the mask. I don't care anymore. So I'm much more authentic, and the people pleasing has dropped, but it is just about actually relishing a slower pace. I don't have to hustle as hard, and I can still get the results and have the authority and help the people, help my clients without having to be on 24/7. So I think it's brilliant. Nicky, thank you so much for joining me today and being so transparent and honest with your answers. I really appreciate it. If the listeners want to come and find you and connect with you, where is the best place for them to do that?
Okay, so my best social media channels are Instagram. You can find me at Nicky Masson Global over there, and then also LinkedIn. So I'm Nicky Masson on LinkedIn. So yeah, I love to connect. So come over, find me, say hello, come into my DMs. We'll have a conversation, and it'd be lovely to speak to you.
Amazing. I'll put the links in the show notes for everyone as well. But Nicky, thank you so much again for joining us today. It has been a pleasure. I've really loved this conversation. And to the listeners, thank you as always for joining us this week. And I will speak to you all next week.